Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Holly Wharton. I've been an entrepreneur since 1999, and I know firsthand how difficult it can be to build a business without the right mindset. This is a podcast for those of us who struggle with showing up in our business with confidence and authenticity, who resist taking big action because of fears and doubts, who know deep down that it's possible to create something bigger, and yet you're not. This podcast combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business more easily in a way that feels aligned. This podcast features solo shows with me and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world, including my monthly co-hosted episodes with Joe Casey. My goal is to help you grow your business more quickly and easily by transforming your mindset. For me, mindset work is a lifelong practice, and I want to help you make a habit out of mindset work. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 246. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another co-hosted episode with the fabulous Joe Casey. Today, we are going to talk about fear or misalignment and how to tell the difference. This is a really good episode. I'm really excited to put this out there. I think you're going to find this useful and interesting. But before we get into today's episode, I wanted to mention that I was recently a guest on the Discover Your Talent podcast. Now, you can go to that episode and find the show notes and everything for that podcast if you go to hollywharton.com/DYT, Discover Your Talent. However, you may have noticed that episode also showed up in the feed for this podcast. So if you have subscribed to the Business Mindset Podcast, that episode should have shown up for you. This is something that I'm really excited about. It's a kind of newish tech trick that I learned about a month or two ago. And my idea is to include podcasts in this feed whenever I'm a guest on someone else's show. Now, due to technical reasons, that's not always possible. They have to be hosting with Libsyn, as do I. They also have to be versed in how to do this, but I've provided a tutorial for people to make it easier for them, which will then make it easier for you to listen to episodes where I've been on someone else's show. This is really important for me because it will help you discover new shows that hopefully you will find interesting and useful. So that is that. And I have a quick word before we get into the main part of the episode. Quick word from Joe Casey herself, who will be telling you a little bit about a new online course, online membership program, online treasure of information that she's got that I have taken a look at recently, and I think it's amazing. It's got loads of information, like really practical stuff that you can just download and personalize for yourself to help you build your business as a coach or as a therapist or as a holistic practitioner and just get started with all the stuff that you need. This is really important for me to share with you because I've recently had a few discovery calls with people who are really fresh into business. They're just getting started with business and they need help and support with this basic stuff as they're getting set up. So this is a really, really good resource for you as you get your business set up and learn the basics of business. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe really quick, and then I'll be back.
We know that building a coaching, healing, or holistic business can be challenging and isolating. So at the Meaningful Business Academy, we don't think you should have to go it alone. We've pulled together all of the tools, trainings, and support you need to get more clients and make more income, without you having to resort to the dark arts or sleazy manipulation techniques. Instead, you'll find done-for-you templates, masterclasses, guest expert interviews, and a supportive, like-minded community, all for a low monthly price. Check out the Meaningful Business Academy at meaningfulbizacademy.com because it's time to do business differently.
All right, so I'm back, and thank you, Joe, for sharing that with us. So, on to today's episode. This post was inspired by a question that someone asked in my Facebook group, a topic that was suggested for the two of us to discuss. And we'll actually read that post later on in the episode. But basically, today in this podcast, using me as an example, once again, much like our MBTI episode, we talk about the difference between misalignment and fear, how to tell whether you are out of alignment with your business or if you're just stuck with fear. Some people can kind of solve this dilemma using logic, but for those of us who are more intuitive, and if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to guess you probably identify as being an intuitive person. For those of us who are intuitive, we can really struggle with being in this type of situation. The differences are really subtle, and it's really worth digging deeper into this topic to get clarity on what's exactly going on, so we know exactly what we can do. So that's what Joe and I take a look at today. So what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to determine whether you're experiencing fear or misalignment in your business. You're going to learn how to tap into the feeling behind what's actually going on. We're going to look at how I worked through the murky months in my business. We're going to explore my journey from doubt to clarity on my business path. We're going to talk about how I identified the difference between fear and misalignment in my own business. And I hope that my story serves as an example for you so you can see how I've worked through this and how you might begin to work through it yourself if you encounter this situation in your business and life. We're going to talk about how to move forward even when you're not 100% clear on what your path is or where you're going or what you want to do. We're going to talk about the questions that you need to ask yourself in order to get clear about whether or not you're in alignment with your business. We're going to explore how this fits in with the why behind your business. We're going to talk about how to get clear on what type of fear you're experiencing and the questions you need to ask yourself. Finally, we're going to wrap it up with the things that you need to pay attention to when you're actually taking action in your business, once you kind of get things figured out and you get going. Now, since we recorded this episode, I think we recorded this maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I've got a lot more clarity on my business. So I'm very clear that my path forward for this year and probably for the foreseeable future is on my writing. I love writing. I've got so many plans for books. I've got a whole list of books. I've got walking books. I've got mindset books. I'm going to be re-releasing new editions of the books that I released in 2 years ago in 2016. And I'm super, super excited about this. So the books are my main focus for this year and, as I said, for the foreseeable future. And I'm also going to be seeing clients because I love seeing clients, but getting clients is not going to be my main focus. My main focus is going to be writing because I can help so many more people with my books than I can with one-to-one client sessions because my days are limited, my hours are limited, and writing is so much fun. So that's my focus. So I'm going to stop talking now and get into today's episode, which is really, really juicy. And I hope you find it interesting and useful as usual.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is our monthly special podcast episode with me, Joe Casey, and Holly Wharton. Hiya, Holly.
Hey, how are you?
I'm really good. It's a nice kind of quite bright spring is on the way, dare I say it, type day. We're recording this early March, and we've had snow and cold weather, and so today feels like a bit of a shift in the energy. How about you?
Yeah, it's kind of that bright grey.
Yeah, that we're so good at in England.
As opposed to the dark grey. So yeah, it's quite nice.
So today we're doing an episode around a question that was asked in your Facebook group. So Holly has a Facebook group called the Business Alchemists. And so a woman called Esther asked a question that she wanted us to address on the podcast. So I'll just read it out. She says, "Hey Holly, I've been thinking about something just lately and wondered if anyone has the same thoughts about this. When you're not making the progress you want in your business, how do you know if, 1, you're reluctant to move out of your comfort zone and step up, in which case it may be worth pursuing gently, or 2, what you want to do or think you should do is out of alignment with your values, in which case it should probably be abandoned. Both these situations can feel like fear, reluctance, or lead to procrastination. How do you tell the difference if it feels off, but you're not quite sure why? This is something I would love to hear you and Joe discuss on the podcast." So, Esther, your wish is our command. So I think this is a really interesting question, and I think it's something that comes up a lot for particularly heart-centered entrepreneurs. I honestly think there are some people who are very cerebral, very logic, and they operate primarily from logic, and they can do pros and cons lists and things like that. And it all kind of works up on that level. And I suspect, I might be wrong, but I suspect that for those folks, this isn't something that comes up quite so much for them because they can logically work through this. But for those of us who operate more from a kind of a gut level, more from a heart space level, I think this is something that is kind of common because you and I have both experienced this on more than one occasion, and it's something that comes up for clients that we've worked with. So I think this is a really important topic of conversation.
I agree, because the differences are really, really subtle. So I think you've got to be the kind of person that can really tune in to tell the difference.
And there is a difference, and it's important to be able to distinguish what the difference is. And it's not always that easy to do. So we're going to dive into this. So Holly, this is something that is quite kind of pertinent to you at the moment.
Yes, it is. So I've been hinting on the podcast about how things are changing in my business. I'm in transition again. Things are happening, but I don't quite know what. And I probably have a little more information this week than perhaps I did last week. So a few things have been happening in my life over the last year that have led to this. So early last year, I launched Heart-Centered Energy Work, my new way of working with clients, and that was really exciting. And I did the launch, and I did all the stuff to get it out there. And I set my goals, and I signed people up. And then afterwards, I felt exhausted. And I kind of went into hibernation about, not exactly, but I just felt really kind of burnt out with marketing and promoting my business for about a month after that. And then from there, it kind of spiraled into this real dislike of marketing. And at the same time, I was having all these conversations with my business friends and doing videos and doing webinars about finding new ways of marketing because I was so tired of the way online marketing has been functioning for the last few years. I don't want any part of it. I don't know what the new way is. And so I was having all these conversations with friends and both privately and publicly about how we can find new ways of marketing. But it wasn't until kind of the end of last year that I was having a chat with a friend of mine who you also know, Joe, Sharon Moore. And she was like, so how are you doing? And I said, I just really am so sick of marketing. And she said, Holly, every time I talk to you, you say the same thing. And this was towards the end of last year. And I realized I'd been complaining about that the entire year. And kind of that it was just really shocking to me because I'm not the kind of person that complains about things, but yet I realized I'd been so just negative about this the entire year. And it was so confusing to me because I've always loved marketing. My business before I did the mindset stuff was social media marketing. When I had my very first business in the hospitality industry, my role within the company was online marketing. Like I've always really liked marketing. I've never been one of those business owners who's been like, I just want clients. I don't want to do the marketing. I've loved it. And so for me to fall out of love with that part of the business was really confusing to me. So it was like all this stuff was going around my business and the energy really started shifting. It was like I loved doing the client sessions, but I hated everything I had to do to get the clients. And of course, you can't really run a business if you're not doing any marketing. And so just things in my business just started feeling out of alignment and just not feeling right. And I was taking action and I was doing stuff, but it was kind of spiraling down into this, just things aren't right. And it wasn't until the end of the year that I kind of sat down and said, things need to change. Something is not right. And I need to rethink my business. So here we are.
So what kind of things then have been going on? How's that been showing up for you? Tell me. I want more detail. I want to, coaching mode. How's that been showing up? Other than this feeling that I'm kind of sick of marketing. I mean, literally, how does that show up for you? That feeling of I'm sick of this.
Right. Just not feeling like doing it. And it's not necessarily, when I first started my business, I struggled with marketing my business because it was like I had a lot of lack of self-confidence, low self-esteem. It wasn't the mindset stuff. Like I've worked through all that stuff. So it wasn't like I was afraid to market myself because I didn't want to, put myself out there because I didn't believe that I could do it. It wasn't that stuff. It was just I didn't feel like doing the videos. I didn't feel like doing, Facebook Lives. No way in hell. Like I just didn't even feel like talking about my business. The only thing I really loved was the client sessions, and I knew I loved the podcast. I knew that whatever my business morphed into, I would not let go of the podcast because I love it so much. And I liked my Facebook group. But yeah, that's what it should. I just did not feel like doing the marketing.
So almost like an inertia?
Yeah, exactly. So I think when I say that things were kind of spiraling down to that kind of low point, it was like I got so burnt out from launching the heart-centered energy work. And that was early in the year. That was like April, May. And then from there, it just kind of dwindled down to, I just can't be bothered. But at the same time, knowing that if I wanted to have a business, I had to do something. So it was like I was doing the bare minimum.
And I think this is something that I wouldn't say typical, but I think that the way that if somebody was, I can imagine some kind of business coach going, well, you and I even have had conversations about, there are just some things in your business that you don't fancy doing, but you just have to do if you want your business to work. Yeah. And so you know all that, and you know that, you can push through that to a point. But from what you're saying, it sounds like there's just something much deeper, much more fundamental with that. Yeah. It
was like, it wasn't until the end of the year that I realized that the fact that this had been going on for so many months just signified something more. It wasn't just that I had fallen out of love with marketing. It was something wasn't right in my business and something needed to change. And so I needed to identify what I was going to do with my business, how things were going to change. And so towards the end of the last year, I decided I was going to kind of stop, worrying about the marketing stuff, and I was going to focus on my writing, which I had, published a bunch of books a couple of years ago. Last year, I think I only put one book out, and so I wanted to get back into writing. I really love writing. Writing is really important to me, and I love helping people through my books, whether it's my mindset books or my walking books. I love that, and so I wanted to focus on writing, and I wanted to focus on the outdoors stuff. Because simultaneously things were changing in my personal life, in the sense that I've been in the spiritual group for about 12 years now, and it's been a very important part of my life. It was absolutely life-changing for me. And it's the kind of thing where we have like group exercises that we do once a week, where we get together as a group, and then we have personal exercises that we do every day. So kind of like meditation, but different. And that was just not feeling right to me for the last couple of years. It was feeling like something was missing, and I didn't know quite what was missing at first. And then I realized I spend so much time out in nature, and it's not just because I love being outdoors. It's because I feel a deep spiritual connection to nature, and my spiritual group wasn't reflecting that. And so it took me a while to find kind of my new path. Still haven't let go of the old path, but I found my new path, and I'm now studying Druidry. And that just feels so right. And so I realized that in addition to focusing on my writing this year, I also wanted to focus on my walking groups and taking women out walking like I do with my meetup group, but doing more of that and then bringing more of the spiritual side into the walk. So rather than we're just going to walk on a trail for 5 hours, bringing some of that kind of deeper connection to nature into the walks, and perhaps taking my mindset clients outdoors and working with them in that way. But again, this has kind of been going on for the last couple of months, but I haven't had 100% clarity on what that looks like.
Okay, so I've got all kinds of questions. I'm like, oh, Druidry. I've always been fascinated by that. Okay, so it sounds to me, as you're talking, like you do actually have quite a lot of clarity around this.
Yeah. I have more clarity than I think I've realized.
So where do you think the the doubt has been, or the belief that you're doubting it?
Well, I had a big shift on Monday when I had a session with my friend Cara Wild, and I realized I have been ever since I trained as a coach, I've been so stuck on the way to run a business is by coaching people or doing the mindset work with people, but like having those one-to-one sessions, which I love. But I've realized I really want to serve people through my writing. And so I think my business is going to kind of do a flip where I'm focusing more on serving people through my writing. And then if people want to do the one-to-one work with me, great. I love doing that. But my focus is going to be more on serving people through the books and helping people with mindset stuff, but through kind of teaching through writing.
It also sounds like there's a real, this nature connection is so vital almost to this next.
It is. And I don't know how to combine. That's the thing. I don't know how to combine the two. So it's kind of like I have these two things. So I've got the business mindset stuff on one hand, and then I've got the nature stuff on the other hand. Both are incredibly important to me. I don't want to run two businesses, but I'm not quite sure how to bring the two together. So I think that's the piece that's either missing or it's going to become clear as I kind of walk down these two paths.
Literally and metaphorically.
Yes.
So then going back to Esther's question.
Yes.
What's your process been around being able to identify which has been kind of fear? Because I can hear some of that kind of fear. Oh, well, I don't know how to do it, and business wise, and how much of it has been, I know this isn't in alignment for me anymore.
Well, I think for a lot of last year, it was just falling out of alignment, but not seeing that. And then it was, I think towards the end of last year, it just hit me. Things are not in alignment. And then now as I'm getting clarity and I'm finding the new way forward, I think some new fears are popping up because I don't have that 100% clarity on my vision and where it is that I'm going. And I'm the kind of person who I like to know exactly where I'm going, and I like to have a clear vision, and I like to know exactly like what to focus on. And so I'm coming out of that messy middle, but I'm still kind of at the end part of it. And so I still find it kind of frustrating and I am fearful about not having the 100% clear vision of where I'm going with this business.
Yeah, I hear that. And I'm also kind of, for some reason, there's part of me smiling, going, well, nature doesn't have a clear vision.
I know, exactly. Nature wants a snowstorm. She gives you a snowstorm.
Exactly. So again, kind of going back to Esther's question, I really want to kind of drill down on this. So what were the signs when you realized what for you? Because I think this is probably going to be slightly different for everyone, but for you, how did you know, oh, this isn't just that I'm like, I feel like I'm out of my comfort zone. This is like, this just isn't right for me now. There's been a shift. There's been like a ground shift.
It was like a gut feeling that I was out of alignment with my business. And I'm very much a gut feeling kind of person, as you know. But it took me a long time to get clarity on that. It was like I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't seeing it. And then once everything kind of fell into place, it was like, oh, this just doesn't feel right. I've got to shift things so I can find a new path forward.
I think that's really interesting, because my experience of when things are out of alignment is also very kinesthetic. It's also very kind of, and I think there is a somatic way that we can kind of tune in, especially for, heart-centered folks and people who have meaningful businesses. You can only logically think yourself through something for so long until you kind of get to the point, actually, okay, so how is this feeling? How is this sitting with me? Where in my body am I getting this sensation? How does my body feel when I am in alignment? How does my body feel when I'm not in alignment? So I'm wondering if that's similar to your kind of your gut check.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think often we don't pay attention to those signs, but I think it's really, really valuable to sit and ask ourselves those questions. Like, when I'm excited about something, how does that feel?
Mm-hmm.
Do I still feel excited about my business? No. So maybe something's wrong there. Is it fear, or is it just out of alignment? And I think that's the thing. It was really clear to me that it wasn't fear. And yes, I could have just kind of used my head to override that and say, well, I'm just going to get on with it. I'm going to do the hustle and I'm going to do the marketing. But for me, the most important thing has always been spiritual and personal development and growing as a person. And in order to do that, I need to be open and aware to these subtle things, such as my business is out of alignment, something needs to shift, rather than just forging on and doing the thing that I said I was going to do.
Yeah, I mean that's what I meant by my kind of comment about, well, you know, nature doesn't need a
yeah, exactly.
It's like you've got to, and I think that is something that sets people apart who are, you know, driven by creating something meaningful in the world, creating something that is heart-centered. Is that it's almost like there's no point in doing it if it isn't aligned. And it's kind of deeper than that. What I find is that, you know, when something becomes out of alignment, it's almost impossible to kind of just drag yourself through it. Mm-hmm. It's very frustrating because, you know, the kind of the business brain, the business part of you kind of goes, well, come on, you know what to do. It's just exactly. The whole rest of you is saying, nope.
Yep.
So I think there's definitely a kind of a physical, you know, kinesthetic thing that occurs. I think there's also something about, you know, whatever that term alignment means to you. So, you know, for you, Holly, you're somebody who's very aware spiritually. You're very tuned into that. You're very tuned into, you know, to spirits and guides and nature. And, you know, and so there's, I can't help but think in metaphors now of nature. And it's like, you know, you can have the most fantastically scientifically produced seed in the world, but if you put it in conditions, if you put it in the ground and soil that doesn't have the right mix of nutrients, that isn't in the right, you know, aspect, then it's not going to grow and it's not going to flourish. Mm-hmm. And so I think there is something about having those elemental things in your business aligned as well. You know, go on.
And I think it's also important to realize why are you doing your business? I mean, I think for people that are running a business because they just want to be self-employed, they want to be an entrepreneur, and they just want to make money, then who cares if you're in alignment?
Yeah.
Because you want the money. That's your number one priority. But for me, that's always been secondary to serving people and helping people in a way that is deeply aligned with me. And I am changing constantly. So it makes sense that my business would change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the notes that I made for kind of maybe topics to discuss as part of this conversation is, you know, how does this iteration of your business, or the thing that you're you know, in a dilemma as to whether to do, you know, again, going back to Esther's question, is how does this fit in with the why behind your business? And like you say, if your why is to make money, to be able to, you know, escape a 9-to-5 job that you're in, or to, you know, then fine. It doesn't really matter, because your why is I want freedom. I want to be able to make money. And, you know, I can set up you know, do drop shipping or do whatever. And, you know, it really doesn't matter. But if your why is I want to change the world in a little way, or I want to be able to help people through my writing, or I'll help people to kind of raise their awareness, or to be less hard on themselves, or to change the conversation about something, then if the kind of the actions that you're telling yourself you should be taking in your business isn't taking you closer to that why, or deeper into that why, then I think there is going to be kind of internal pushback against it. Yeah. Which can be good, but also maddeningly frustrating. Because, you know, we all got to eat as well.
Yeah.
Really curious about this idea of fear, and there's a lovely blog post which we'll link to in the show notes from Tara Moore, who the author of Playing Big, and she talks about different kinds of fear. And I think this is such a good concept to unpack, because it can still be fear and be the right thing to do. And it can still be fear and be the wrong thing to do. So, fear shows up in a number of ways. Yeah. And in this blog post, she talks about, she has a conversation with Rabbi Alan Liu, and he explains that in biblical Hebrew, there are several different words for fear. Pachad is projected or imagined fear, the fear whose objects are imagined. That in kind of modern terms that we might think of, that kind of irrational lizard brain. It's like, oh God, what will people think of me if I produce this thing? Will people think I'm getting too big for my boots? That kind of fear, those kind of blocks, imposter complex, the stuff that you and I help people to work through all the time, Holly. But there's another type of fear. There's a second Hebrew word for fear, which is yira. And Rabbi Liu described yira as the fear that overcomes us when we suddenly find ourselves in possession of considerably more energy than we're used to, inhabiting a larger space than we are used to inhabiting. And it's also the feeling we feel when we're on sacred ground. And Tara Moore says, if you felt a calling in your heart, or uncovered an authentic dream for your life, or felt a mysterious sense of inner inspiration around a project or idea, then you recognize this description. And we can often confuse the two types of fear and simply call it fear. But if we start to unpack them a little bit more, then we can start to tease out the two things, because I think we need to approach them differently when we're dealing with that kind of lizard brain, irrational. But we have tools that we can use to sometimes logically break those down, or just kind of bypass that amygdala response to the kind of oh, that's really scary, and we also have some tools that we can use when we're dealing with yira. I think a big one for me is that being able to expand into that space, being in community, knowing that you have people who are supporting you and encouraging you and kind of almost like lifting you up and holding you there as you grow into this new space. And that's, just absolutely invaluable. But the first step with all of this is understanding that even if it is fear, it can still be just fear of becoming bigger or stepping into the thing that is right. And we need to do some kind of self-awareness work around that, around, okay, well, what is this fear telling me? Where is it coming from? How is it showing up? Is it justified? Is it real? Is it helpful? Is it something I want to listen to? Has it got lessons to teach me? And so I think it's important to recognize that even if it's fear, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily something you just blast through.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think conversely, going back to your plans, your vision for your business, are you still excited about that? Do you still get excited about this vision that you've set out for yourself? If not, then maybe you're out of alignment as well. And if you are really excited about it still, but yet fearful, then that's also kind of a good sign that you're on the right track, and you just need to work through those fears.
Yeah. For sure. It's do you ever wish there was just like a simple answer to these things? Oh, hell yeah. That's the thing.
If it were simple, everyone would have successful businesses and we would all be like enlightened, because it would be easy. But I think this is such an important part of personal and professional growth, is to become aware of these really subtle differences between things. And like you said in the beginning, they show up differently for everyone. So it's not like we can say, if this happens, then it's because you're scared of moving out of your comfort zone. And if that happens, then you're out of alignment. Like it's so different for everyone. And if we asked 10 entrepreneurs, we would get 10 different answers.
Yeah. I do think that the very first step is just having that kind of that space and allowing yourself to be able to do the work around what is going on here for me? How does it feel? What are some of the things I'm telling myself about it? How does it feel in my body? Rather than just trying to push through.
Yeah.
Because I also think that because we live in this, really instant culture that says, everything should be like super easy and there should be a pill for that. And it's like, oh God, yes, I really wish that there was sometimes, but there isn't. And if you want something rich and deep and meaningful, then this is the work sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that's also another really important thing, what you just said, is that oftentimes when we get into business for the first time, if we don't have prior business experience, we think, oh, I have this idea. I just need to, take action and I'm going to be an instant success. And it's, most of the time, that's not how it works. So it's whatever you do, even if it is in alignment, and even if you are taking action out of your comfort zone, you still got to do a lot of work to get to the point where it's, successful and flowing and whatever.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're out of alignment, it's like also trying to do it wearing, concrete boots or something.
Yes.
I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but I'm currently working with the amazing Tanya Geisler at the moment. She's my coach at the moment, and it's the way I'm feeling right now. I just want her to be my coach forever because she's brilliant. One of the things that she's had me do, and the other people in her program do, is identify your brand of joy. Your brand of joy is a bit like your zone of genius. And identify the times when you really feel like you are in the zone and you are alive, when you're just lit up when you're doing your work. And I'm curious for you, Holly, where your kind of brand of joy, where your zone of genius, where those places are where you are lit up in your work, where they are right now.
Well, so still during the client sessions, I love asking the questions and digging deep and getting curious and like picking apart the mind crap that people have so that we can unravel it and help them get the beliefs that they need to do whatever it is that they want. So that I love. I get really excited about that. But I also love the outdoor stuff. I love taking women out, in my meetup group and showing them places and seeing them as we go around the bend in a trail and they see something beautiful and they go, oh, this is gorgeous. This is amazing. And it's all these places that I go walking all the time, but they haven't seen it before. And so they just think it's amazing. So I love sharing that beauty of nature with people. So yeah, I don't know. It's two very different things.
I don't know. I can see them. So the kind of the next stage that Tanya's had us do is identify where your brand of joy is, and then how can you start to incorporate that into other areas of your life and your business? And so one of the things that I've mentioned this on the podcast before, that my daughter's been quite ill of late. Fortunately, we seem touching everything made of wood and every crystal healing thing ever. We seem to have turned a bit of a corner with it. She's been on some new medication. She's not had an asthma attack in weeks now, which has been just brilliant. Brilliant doesn't even cover it, obviously. It's
No, and especially with the weather we've been having, that's a miracle.
Yes, I know it has. It's been like super, super cold here, which has been a trigger for her. But for the past few weeks, she's been really well since being on this extra medication they've given her. But one of the things that I was really struggling with at the turn of the year and kind of January, February was my business has been built on this kind of. So one of the areas where I have this, my brand of joy comes out is where I'm in deep connection with people, and that for me has always been in the conversations that I have with my coaching clients, where I'm doing that kind of like deep work with clients, and I love it. And so my business has been built around doing, lots of one-on-one sessions. I've never, I have a group program, but even that group program is intimate, and there's one-on-one sessions involved in that. I've never wanted to do the kind of, I have 40 people in a group and I have no contact with them. And so I was really struggling with this. Well, how can I still find joy in my business when I feel like I can't do the things that give me the most joy? And so one of the things that Tanya had me do was identify where I could be using that connection, that kind of deep connection in other areas of my life and my business, while, you know, things are kind of sorting out with Maya. And I realized that the podcast gives me the opportunity to do that. And those of you who listen to, you know, the Meaningful Business podcast, you'll have noticed a real shift in the types of conversations that I'm having with people. I'm doing more, longer, more in-depth interviews. I want to know the why behind people's businesses. I want to know, you know, what makes a meaningful business for them. And being able to just lean into those deeper conversations rather than feeling, I think, you know, earlier on in my kind of podcast, I felt like, oh, I have to give people the space to, you know, promote their business and give some tactics and tools and things like that. Whereas it's much more kind of conversational and connection based. And not only has that given me that light back around things, it's also proven to be really popular. Who would have thought that when you're working in your zone of genius, people really respond really, really well. Now, as I say, fortunately, Maya is a lot better at the moment, and so I'm tentatively opening up the books now, and I'm doing more one-on-one sessions and things. But there's also something around, if you can hold true to the sense of what is it that gives me that sense of connection, what is it that lights me up, what is it that gives me joy, then I think it becomes a little bit easier to find the path to, this is where the next kind of bit of my business needs to go. Because if I just follow where this path is leading me to, I can, you know, if on my better days, I can trust that it's going to lead me somewhere where I'm going to be able to make money from it and, turn it into a business. Because that's a secondary thing. If I just follow this thing that I know that I'm good at, and gives me joy, and where it, you know, is in alignment, then I know that is always a great starting point, and everything else is work-outable from there. I'm sure that's not an actual word, but does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, definitely.
So, you know, and it's so easy as an outsider to be able to say, you know, I can see this being just absolutely glorious for you, Holly. I know that it's going to all fall into place. You will, you know, work out the pieces of, you know, how to move your business over so that you are able to stay in this place of real alignment and richness, because that's what you love and that's where you are really giving value to people. But like I say, it's easy for me as an outsider to say that. I know for when you're in it, it's like, well, how do the pieces fall together?
Yeah. And one of the things that's always been challenging for me has been taking one step and trusting that after I've taken that step, I will know which is the next step I need to take.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson I thought I had learned when I channeled the heart-centered energy work process, because that's how it came to me, literally step by step. I had to do the first step, and then the second one was visible. But that's still really frustrating for me. So like I said, I really want like the full vision, and then like I'm happy to, you know, charge forward. But I've had to learn how to take like little action steps to start moving towards these kind of two things that I'm, you know, which seem to be very separate paths, when at some point they're probably going to come together and merge into something that's going to be totally logical. But even though I can't see that now, I'm still having to take action, even though I don't see that full vision.
And that is scary. I think that's you know, just part of being a human, you know, a rational human, is to kind of go, yeah, but I would feel so much better if I just knew what all the steps were, please, right now. And it's just not how it works, unfortunately, is it?
But I think that because I've kind of identified these two paths as being in alignment, it's easier to take the action, even though it's not as easy as I'd like it to be. So I think that's another side, you know, like when I was focusing on the walking stuff, and I thought, well, I want to take people out walking more, and so I need sports insurance, and that was a pain in the ass to get. But I easily took action on that, and I like called the insurance guy every day because he wasn't responding to me, and I was, you know, getting the stuff I needed to get. And that was actually really easy, even though it was a pain in the ass, because I knew I needed that in order to kind of spend more time with people out in nature. And, you know, so I think that's another thing to pay attention to. When you take the action, is it easy? I don't know. Maybe that's not it. I don't know exactly what I want to say here. It was challenging. Like there were roadblocks. I kept having to like overcome challenges, but it was so clear to me that I needed that thing, so I was taking action on it.
Yeah. No, I can completely relate to that, and I think that when you're doing something new, the familiar is always easier because, well, it's familiar. We can see the pitfalls, even if it's, it might be boring, or you might kind of like, oh God, yeah, I've done this a million times. But I think when it is something so new, and yet you have this calling, which is saying, do it, follow this, follow that, and it's you're almost having to overcome that logic bit of your brain that is going, yeah, but there could be anything out there. There really could be. Are you sure this is a good idea? Are you really sure this is a good idea? I think we should just stay where we were, because at least we knew it was safe there. And so you're having to manage that, because that is a natural human response, and still do the work to be able to keep tuning into what for me, I mean, I don't know for you, because you're obviously far more spiritually attuned, but for me, that voice that is kind of, saying this is the path to follow, that sounded a bit kind of Obi-Wan Kenobi, this is the path to follow, is always quieter, and I have to, get still.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the fear place, I like to be really busy, because I like to try and run away from that shit as much as I can.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good point. Quiet time, journaling, whatever it is that you do to kind of get clarity from that quiet space. Guided meditations, I've found those so useful in the past when I've done transitions, into my business, making big changes, really just quieting down and allowing that information to come through, allowing the voice of your intuition to speak, because it's so hard to hear sometimes if you're busy.
Yeah. And acknowledging that, this is going to be messy for a while.
And being willing to wade through that mess.
Yeah.
Rather than running away from it.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to add to this kind of conversation about, about this, Esther's question about, how do we know the difference?
I was just thinking, I feel like we need to kind of sum this up, but it's not something that we can neatly sum up.
So I think the points that we've covered have been, how do you know that kind of difference between when it's out of your comfort zone, it's a question of stepping up. It's like that new level, new devil kind of feeling.
Yep.
I think a big part of that is being aware of what's the type of chatter and dialogue that you've got going on around that.
Yep.
What's going on for you physically? How does it feel in your body? What's the kind of somatic response to that? And examining that question of, is this that kind of fear of stepping into something greater, that era, or is it the more, I guess, kind of common or bog standard, the patch ad, the kind of, oh my God, what will people think of me? What if it's a disaster? What if, all
what if it doesn't work?
Yeah,
what if I come up with this new idea, I get excited about it, and it doesn't work?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. What if I'm burning my whole business down by doing this? Which is a fear that I genuinely had for, a good chunk of the early part of last year when I was transitioning in my business. So being able to almost identify the different types of fear and the different types of experience that you have around fear and around alignment, or when it's out of alignment. And maybe for you, it's not something that is physical. Maybe it's something that is more visual. Maybe it's something that's more auditory. It's as NLPers, we're aware that, for some people, it's a very kind of, people will talk in tones up. It just feels out of harmony to me.
Yeah.
It's just something sounds off about it. Yeah. It's just playing a real, bum note for me.
Yes. And I think that can be sometimes very difficult for us to see on our own. But now that you've said that, I remember a master gut call I don't know, it was our last one or the previous one, where I was talking about, I'm really excited about focusing more on my, writing and getting my books and doing a new edition of my books. And I do get excited about marketing my books. And they were like, your energy changed so much. Your face lit up. You sounded so excited. And I hadn't kind of seen that on my own. So I really needed my master gut people to mirror that back to me.
Yeah.
So I think talking this out with business friends or personal friends or whatever can also help if they're the kind of person who can be aware of the changes in you as you talk about these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Getting outside of your own head and your own perspective is just vital for everything.
Yeah.
We can't see our own blind spots. And as somebody who can overthink for, I could win Olympic gold in the overthinking Olympics. Having other people just to kind of, I'm just going to dump all my thoughts out and help me, sort through them is, oh my goodness, it's just, I don't know how I would function without having that.
And of course, working with a coach, like not just working with, having this conversation with friends, but working with someone professional who can professionally pick apart the shit in your head and help you see things that you can't see.
Yeah, exactly. That is the kind of the tools that we are trained to use. We, that is our profession. That's what we do. And sometimes it is about, okay, this is about doing the work. And it may feel scary, the place that you're in now. And I know that it probably feels even scarier, the thought of taking the next step. But the only other option is you either give up or you stay in this kind of place of, I don't know what to do, I don't know. And that is not sustainable. It's about, I know it's a cliche, but it's the only way out of it is through.
Mm-hmm. But you've got to be willing to walk through it.
Yeah. Literally, in your case, Holly.
Yes, exactly.
Anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I feel like, again, this is so different for everyone, but I feel like we've given people some ideas of where they can get started to figure out whether they're scared of moving out of their comfort zone or whether they're out of alignment. So I feel like this has been a good start. So hopefully people will have a better idea of where they are now.
Yeah, I hope so. And I am really excited about where the next kind of iteration of Holly's work in the world is taking her. I mean, genuinely am. I mean, one of the things that I said to you when we first hopped on Skype this morning was, there's been a real shift in your energy. Something has happened. You seem much more kind of grounded. And not that you were flighty or, before, but you just seem a lot more rooted in your energy. So
it's the druidry.
Obviously it is, yes. I am fascinated now to ask a gazillion questions about druidry, but that maybe we will save for another show.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being so kind of open and just kind of honest about your process. One of the things that I always admire about you, Holly, and that I think makes for great conversations, is that you're really open to being transparent, and there's not an ounce of artifice about you. And I think that's why people are so attracted to you and your work. So I'm
thank you.
Really pleased to call you my friend.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think these kinds of conversations are so much more useful to people than, my business is amazing, 6 figures in 6 months, and you can do this and you can hustle, and like without acknowledging the crappy parts of business. So I think these deeper conversations I find much more useful. So
yeah, it's not all smooth sailing, but when it works, it's glorious, and when it doesn't work, it can feel really shitty.
Yeah, and really frustrating.
Yes, yeah,
really murky.
Yeah, but there's always a way through it, and that's what I think we like to focus on. It's not always a neat way through it. It's not always easy. But there's always a way through it. And
exactly. But to get through it, you've got to take action, no matter what. Like, you've got to do something. You can't just sit there and moan about how, you're stuck.
Yeah.
Something you've got to do. So even if it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little action that maybe makes no sense, or you got to do something to get moving.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you for this conversation.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks to everyone out there for listening. If you've got any questions about it, as usual, you can find us, Jo at joecasey.com.
Holly at hollywharton.com.
I was trying to do my radio kind of...
Sorry.
It's all right. It's me trying to be more cheesy than I'm capable of. Thanks so much for listening. I will speak to you soon.
Bye. So, please drop me a line and let me know what you thought about this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and get in touch there. I would love to give you a shout out on the show if you would like to write in. I would also love for you to join me in my private Facebook group, Business Mindset Alchemists, so we can continue the conversation there. I would love to hear what you have to think about this episode and get some feedback from you in the group. This is a group that's dedicated to exploring business mindset and how you can get the mindset you need to achieve your dreams. I would love to see you in there. So if you head over to hollywharton.com/group, you will be redirected to the Facebook group. Finally, whether you've been listening to the show for a while or if you've just heard your first episode, if you're drawn to learning more about mindset work and you'd like to learn more about how you can work with me or whether or not we're a good fit, please get in touch or head over to hollywharton.com/call, CALL, and you can book in a call with me to learn more. I would love to work with you and help you transform your mindset using heart-centered energy work. Thank you so much for listening. I say this every week and I'm so grateful that you listen every week. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on iTunes. It would mean the world to me. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/246 for the show notes on this episode. And next week I'm back with another solo episode. So thank you so much for joining me and have a fabulous day. Thank you so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for the topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and learn more about business mindset, join my private community for entrepreneurs at hollywharton.com/group. That will redirect you to the Facebook group. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you so much.